that's this interesting aspect of knowing your position, knowing who you are, but knowing who you're made to work with and connect to. And you find those pieces and just run with it, own it. And then it becomes fun, because then people are like, how did this happen? I'm like, I didn't do it. It's not about me. It's not about us. It's about this greater mission. So when someone looks at it and says, well, I don't know about this, I'm like, yeah, you shouldn't, but you should try it.
What if you could achieve laser sharp focus, enhanced energy, and a calmer mind naturally? It's time to zero in with Root Brands. Zero In is the ultimate nootropic, an all-natural blend of 5 adaptogens and 2 catalysts designed to boost your brain and body. This powerful formula allows your gut to produce neurotransmitters like dopamine and serotonin, improving mood, relaxation, and mental clarity. Say goodbye to stress and fatigue. Zero In enhances focus, increases reaction time, and sharpens mental acuity, helping you perform at your best. And when it's time to rest, Zero In supports deep, restorative sleep and vivid dreams thanks to its ability to create endogenous melatonin and DMT. Take control of your mental and physical performance. Try Zero In by Root Brands today and experience the difference. Order now at therootbrands.com. Your best self is waiting. Blessings, folks. Welcome back to another episode of the Hitstreak. I'm your man, Nick Hyder. And folks, I got an extra special treat in the building for you today. And we've had an amazing run of guests here on the Hitstreak. However, this guy's got to be the best looking one that we've had in the building. And when you see his face in just a moment, you're going to bask in the glory. They say that we look alike. Look alike. And I dig it, man, because that's a sexy looking dude sitting over there. So folks, check it out. In all seriousness, man, this dude right here is the founder and CEO and architect of the Root Brands and the EA to the lovely previous guest, Dr. Christina Rahm, my man, Clayton Thomas. Clayton, how are we doing, big dog?
It's always nice to have your greatest flex go, this is my wife, right? That's the fun part. But when she was in here with some of our team and they're texting me going, we found your brother. You have to come hang out with Nick because you guys are going to have some fun. And you walk in the door and you just know you're home. It's like, okay, this is family. We can do some outlandish stuff together. So it's nice to have our time. It's guy talk.
Let's go.
So you're used to having hits. I might bunt a couple times, but we'll call it good. I'll still get on base.
Hey man, a hit's a hit, right?
Yep, that's right.
A hit's a hit.
It all goes in the book as 1B.
And that's the first one of the day right there, man. We just added our first hit to the hit streak, folks. Let's go. Well, Clayton, you guys were, when I had Dr. Christina in, which that episode absolutely crushed. It blew up like the moment that it came out, man. You guys' reach is unparalleled worldwide, by the way. That was probably the coolest part for me, is having the reach for that amount of time, like literally all over the world, because we do really good in the States, obviously, right? But you left us with a bag of goodies that was life-changing. And let me tell you, all right, I want to talk about, I'm holding it right here in my hands, folks, if you're watching, the Zero In product by Root. Everybody knows I love my nootropics, right? I've been talking about them a lot, but like this is just different.
It's a different level. It's a different game, and having the opportunity to talk to Christina prior to having me here makes that a lot easier, because when you understand, the brain and aspects of a true bioscience engineer, that she literally is a savant and is unlike any other individual on the planet. And being able to understand the biotech industry and pharma, and not from what people think is all the bad aspects, but the level of science that they function with and within, from quantum physics and polarization, and how to truly stack ingredients and combining ingredients specifically, and being able to take that kind of history and then truly take that to nature, and then understanding that some ingredients you might have heard of that have specific properties or benefits, but when you combine them perfectly in the right combinations with the right intention, because the most powerful ingredient in any aspect of, you can say, cooking, right? Because that's what you're doing if you're creating a supplement or if you're making a meal. And we know this from every every one of us who has a mother, which is everyone, your mom might not be the greatest cook, but when she makes you a home cooked meal, it's amazing because it's made with the one thing that we all need, which is love. And that's the underlying secret. Is it's her intention, the harmonics, because she's praying, she's singing every time she's creating a formula, and when she's going through that creative process and embedding that signature in everything that she's doing. But knowing that if you take this, you take this, you take this, like Jen, we were talking initially about, is there caffeine in here? Yes, there is. But when you understand anhydrous caffeine and the mechanism of action can be tweaked from being a stimulant like people are accustomed to with regular caffeine, but it actually acts as a catalyst in a chemical reaction to cause the production of dopamine and serotonin naturally with the other combination of ingredients. You go, well, that's different. And then when you experience it, it's unquestionable. You go, wait a minute, this is not like anything I've ever done before.
I've had access to some great products, man, but like, it was a lot of work to get the same results from one capsule in these folks. I mean, check it out. Look, we were obviously having some fun. You notice some of these are missing right here, but that's all it is. It's literally like heaven in a pill and a capsule. And it's a game changer because it's one of those things where, like, caffeine kind of hits you and you can feel it. You're like, you can tell I was not caffeinated. I'm caffeinated. This right here, you just kind of like ease into greatness.
Smooth.
Yeah.
And like we were talking about, it's like being on a jet, right? That you're taking off, but it's not abrupt. It's not like you're taking off with the Blue Angels. And then when you get to cruising altitude, you're just smooth unless you hit turbulence. But the cool part is if you're in a really good jet and you're high enough, you might hit some turbulence, but you go right through it. And that's the stress of the day. That all of those things become easily managed. But when you've got the capability to function the way God's made us to, and that's that key part, is we've been functioning like we were talking about on a quarter of a tank. And then when you realize that if you fill the gas tank up, you've got a level of performance that you haven't had access to before. It's in you, you're capable of it, but you just don't have it available. And then when you experience it, it's one of those things where you go, oh, this is kind of dope, right? This is a good thing. And, knowing that the product is banned substance free, because we had, athletes all over the world when we first launched it that started using it. We have one of our ambassadors that does a lot of clinical case studies with us is the doctor for the Hungarian Olympic Committee. And so he was working with some elite athletes. And the first case study we got back from him was the world champion in fencing 5 years ago. And he sent us the data and he's like, she had a 50% improvement in her reaction time and quickness in 2 weeks. And like, you played baseball. I was a sprinter. I played baseball, football, going up through high school, played college soccer and was a sprinter in college. And I'm like, hold on. And I'm like, I got a background in kinesiology and physiology. You can't improve reaction time and quickness by 50%. I'm like, show me the data. He's like, we're doing the dot test. Rather, she's been doing this for 2 years. She was 50% faster 2 weeks later. We got all the data. I'm like,
wow,
bro.
Yeah.
What? And being now able to see that across the board with athletes, and for the little influence that we've had in the United States, and trying to explain to people, because there's so much noise, right? There's so many other products. People are like, this is the greatest thing ever. It's like, here, try it. We'll just play with it. Watch what happens. It's not the same. And you look at it from a competitive advantage standpoint, whether it's in business or whether you're a mom and you're taking care of your kids, and you've got all the stress of the day, you've got 27 things you have to do. And then when all of that becomes just linear and manageable and you're not stressed, and then when you get home with your spouse and you're like, I'm not stressed out today. You know what we got to do? We need to communicate, right? Those things are great. So the aspects of life and performance just become better because it's what's naturally within us. Our body's ability, our gut's ability to produce dopamine and serotonin is what is the fuel source that drives all of our function. And you're starting to hear that with, lots of different conversations, like the interview that Rogan just did with Rick Perry. And I think it was Will or Bill Hubbard, talking about ibogaine and the benefits of ibogaine and clearing out dopamine receptors in the brain to give people a reset. But what they don't talk about, what they're not understanding, is that once you do that, what are you going to do to continue to feed it? Because you can do that. Then when you go home, you're like, okay, I had this amazing experience. I'm new, but then what? What you're going to try to find that dopamine hit again.
Yeah.
So being able to be in a position where you've got access to it. You've got the tools available to do what you want to do when you want to do it, how you want to do it. That's insane. I live on it.
So. No doubt. And dude, there's but before I even met you, like there's an energy factor that comes along with you. And we've actually got your sister off camera here. You can just shake your head yes or no. So obviously, like the energy's been big his whole life, but I mean, it's like, this has been. Yeah, absolutely. It's again.
Yeah, she's like, nah, he hasn't changed. And the interesting part for Zero In with me is it balances me. Like, so if you're high functioning, right? Because I hate the term spectrum, right? Because those of us that are truly high functioning, that are left brain dominant, you can say ADD, ADHD, those of us that process faster than most. The reason I wear blue lenses is one of our collaborating docs, who's the top interventional or integrative doc that I know in functional medicine. She's actually in Slovenia. She's a specialist in the spectrum, and we were there working with her because her daughter was in the spectrum because of vaccine injury, and we solved that with Clean Slate and Zero In. And we were in her brain lab, and she's like, "Were you ever diagnosed as ADD?" I'm like, "You think?" I'm like, "Is this really a question?" I'm like, Let's look at the spectrum and go, yeah, I think he's far left. But she's like, look, you're left brain dominant, and blue lenses actually balance your right brain with your left brain. And I'm like, I've never heard this before. So she had just some blue lenses. She's like, here, put these on. And literally within like 30 seconds, I'm like, oh, well,
that's right.
This is smooth.
Yeah.
And, not being able to dumb down, because that's the thing that society wants to do. When I've seen people talk about the spectrum now, I'm like, look, everybody's in a spectrum. Do you want to be closer to idiot or savant?
Yeah.
Because those of us that are high functioning, those of us that are in the spectrum by diagnosis, are closer to genius. Most of us are, right? The key in that, especially if you're a parent, is understanding that you have a literal genius in your household, and you better figure out how to motivate them and how to give them the tools. Because I don't know how you got into baseball, but I got into baseball as a kid because I was reading the back of baseball cards, because I found that the statistics were something that was amazing to try to look at, and studying everybody and going, okay, Rod Carew had, 1,000 at-bats. He had, 372 hits. And he walked this many times. He had this many runs that he scored, and he struck out. Wow, he only struck out 13 times. And he goes, his batting average was this, and slugging was this. What does slugging mean? And getting into these things. So all my friends were buying baseball cards from a collectible standpoint, and I'm flipping the cards over going, oh yeah, this is cool. This guy did this and this and this. And it's the thing with being in the spectrum, and this is so important to apply into school, with the educational process for kids, but also in every aspect, is finding the things that you desire to do and that you can hyper focus on. Because when you get rid of the noise, you get rid of the chaos, it's not that we don't have a problem focusing. It's that you're putting shit in front of us that we don't want to focus on.
That's right.
And you give them the pathway, you put them in the right lane. It's like if you had Secretariat and you're like, well, I think we're just going to have him walk around, and he's a real pretty horse. So maybe we'll have him do polo. No, that horse was made to run. They put him on the track, and then when Ron Turcotte learned that, you know what, I'm just going to drop the reins, we got to see perfection in athletics. But that's just it. It's like, figure out, especially as a parent, or if you're old enough as an individual, figure out the things that are you're best suited for, and run and take it and go with it, because that's what we're here for. And my favorite philosopher, happened to marry her, happened to be her assistant, wrote in her first book that we are each an imperfect piece to a perfect puzzle, right? And we used to joke about that we were 6 degrees from Kevin Bacon. Now we're 6 degrees from 6.5 billion people. It's like when we were talking, she's like, when I was at Amazon, I actually was with Kevin Bacon when I was in Atlanta. And
really?
She stayed up and had drinks with him until like 3 o'clock in the morning, just hanging out and talking. But when you look at that, the whole point is, how do you become the best version of yourself?
That's it.
And when you do that and you start this process, and you can look at it spiritually as that ascension process, because we are each that piece. And sometimes your piece might be bent, it might have a couple jagged edges and you need to smooth out, but you'll figure out where you fit. You're not made to fit with everybody. And when you accept that your job is not to please everyone, your job is not to connect with everyone, but when you become your best piece, you become magnetic because energetically, we have an aura, we have doshas, chakras, meridians. When they start to express properly, you have that magnetic personality because we know that the most powerful frequency that we emit happens to be authenticity. Everybody thinks that it's love, but if you think about it, if you're not your authentic self, you can never show love properly. You can never receive love properly.
Fact.
You'll never feel it properly because you're fake. And when you become your best self, the pieces that are made to connect to you or with you will naturally come. And you'll just know. You walk in a door and you're like, oh, we're going to have some fun. Because this is what we're here for.
Yep.
That's that key component. And that's where we sit in the middle of this ascension process, this test that spiritually that we've been given over the last 5 years, right? We've been walking down this path, and you go, well, we're doing this, we're going to make money, we're doing all these things. Our society is focused on possessions and the things that we can accumulate, and we've gone away from, God, right? And I was speaking on this in Davos, last year, and Christina and I both gave keynote speeches the last time we were in the UAE with Asia One, which is the largest media conglomerate in India and the Middle East. And I was a little bit, coldish with my tone, but I got on stage and I said, look, is it funny that the countries that still put a focus on God and their faith, whether it's the Muslim or Hindu countries, are the ones thriving right now, but the country that's gone away from God and stepped away from Christ is the one that is in absolute turmoil. And I went and sat down, and I'm watching royalty, and they're going, uh-huh. And I went and sat down next to my wife, and she looked at me. She's like, you can't say that about our country. And I'm like, you're damn right I just did. And the finance minister for India is sitting next to me, and he goes, bro, that was great. I'm like, can we be friends? I'm like, the prime minister's your homie for the last 37 years. Can we hang out?
That's right.
But that's just it, is when you understand who you are and you understand what we are, right? It just is. These are the facts of the case, right? And when you own it, then it becomes fun, because then you know that if you're being met with resistance or if you're being met with turmoil, those things are all part of your process, but you know that they're happening because of the path that you're on.
Right.
Because the most interesting piece of insight that I was given by one of my buddies, who's a royal family member in the UAE, we were sitting down at his family compound, with he and his right-hand guy. And we were talking about geopolitics and some of the stuff that was going on, and some of the stuff that the U.S. military has done to cause all the cancer rates and diabetes issues in the GCC because of the Gulf War and the use of depleted uranium. And he looked at me, and this is a royal family member, right? So it's not like he's a lay person that's like, yeah, I heard this on social media.
Right.
He's like, look, you know that your country was hijacked on 9/11 and it's being run by Satanists. And I looked at him and I'm like, bro, if I say that in my own country, I'm a conspiracy theorist.
Yeah.
You're saying it because you guys know it's fact and you deal with it. He's like, yeah. I'm like, can we be friends?
That's right.
Can I just come over here and have a safe space? Can we talk?
That's right.
I'm like, is the CIA still listening to my phone? I'm like, take notes right now. You guys did this. You're hurting our future. But yeah, it's the fun part of the game of being able to just do this walk. Right. And
absolutely.
You get to look at stuff. It's like, well, why did you meet that person, or why were you here? I'm like, because I'm just walking.
Dude, there's so many directions and so many things that we could cover. Honestly, I feel like you and I could turn the camera on and rock and roll and film a whole year's worth of episodes.
It's 5 hours. We're doing a Rogan festival right now. It's like, okay, 5.5 hours later. It's like, you done yet? I'm like, we still got a little bit more to go.
That's right. We're just taking a bathroom break for a second. So we're like, all right. So hold on a minute, because again. So, all right, bear with me. I'm gonna tell a quick little story. Okay, so I'm gonna get to a cool spot. So, the other night there was I guess it was just a couple nights ago when we're sitting here filming this today. I was looking. I was checking something on Instagram, and in my feed, The Rock came up, and he was literally backstage at somewhere in the WWE, done something with the WWE, and they were looking at all the wrestlers' cars that were parked in the inside the place. And I was just watching it because, like, you know, he's arguably one of the biggest celebrities on earth. He's one of the you know, he's worth, you know, approaching $1 billion. He's launched a lot of things. His career is pretty incredible. But it wasn't that long ago that he talks about, you know, having less than $7 in his bank account. But it was, like, the point I'm getting at is where he was at in that, looking at those cars backstage at WWE, he was right where he belonged, right? And that, like, but when he had $7, he still knew he belonged there, and that's how he got there, because it didn't happen by accident, right? And when I meet people like you guys that get a chance to be in proximity to people in the world that nobody else gets a chance to be around, it just, like, you fit in.
Yeah, and I think it's the interesting part of owning yourself and having the unique personality that I have, and it's the one thing Christina's gone over with me. She's like, it's crazy because when you're around normal people, you don't fit in, but when we're around some of our different politierati and such, and she's like, we're in rooms with billionaires and royalty, and you're amongst your kind, because I'm like, yeah, because we're all eccentric. But that's the part of the patina, right? Is when you accept the fact that you are the masterpiece, you know. And it's the one thing when I learned to begin my walk of accepting Christ when I was like 25 or 26 years old. And we were really fortunate because my mom grew up in an alcoholic Catholic household. Okay. My dad grew up in an alcoholic Protestant household.
Where at?
Rochester, Washington. Okay. In the middle of the freaking prairie. People are like, I come from a small town. I'm like, we didn't have a town. We had a stop sign. I'm like, bro, I come from a small town. I'm like, no, my parents started a veterinary practice in the middle of freaking nowhere. Yeah. Literally. The midpoint between Seattle and Portland, and even the wagons hadn't left yet from the freaking Oregon Trail. They're like, we still got these things here. They're old, but they're out in the field. And you know, we would have conversations at dinner about religion, and my mom and dad, amongst the chaos that they grew up in, they're like, you guys will figure this out on your own. And, you know, through this journey of trying to figure out your spirituality, because you know that it's there. You can't argue it. Even the agnostics and the atheists have a belief. They're just skewed because they're controlled. But an agnostic knows that there's a source. They just don't understand it yet. You know, but if you're willing to study, and the most valuable subject, the most innate investment, the greatest investment that you're ever going to make is actually in yourself. The one thing to study most is yourself. And when you truly, that, you know, what do they say? The day that you're born and then the day that you understand why you're born are two most important days. And being able to go through this process, and after studying a lot of things, I can remember, and Ashley and I were just talking about this on the way here, I can remember sitting in church and my pastor, you know, giving the sermon, and it always felt like he was just talking to you personally. Yes. Right? And you go, damn it, why is it today? Well, you feel that way or you're asleep. It's one or the other. It's like your pineal gland's not quite ready yet. And I can remember him asking the question, it's like, look, you know, if you've heard the message and you haven't been saved, and you know you want to accept Jesus Christ, you know, raise your hand. And I'm like, pick me. I felt like Shrek. I was like, donkey. And you know, I was like, okay, you know, I got this now. But then through that process of, I hate reading because I read too slow for how my brain works, and I'm an auditory learner, and it's what Thank you. I ask a lot of questions. You know, so I spent a lot of time playing dominoes and spades with my pastor and my buddies, and I would just say, okay, theologically, what about this? What about this? What about this? What about this? And we'd quote scripture, and my pastor knew the Bible front and back, you know, better than anyone I've ever met. So I was like, well, why do I have to read this whole thing when I can just ask you, and you can quote me chapter and verse, and I can ask more questions, and I can cross-reference what we're talking about in different areas. And, you know, I was able to start to understand what this meant to me. And I'm not very bright, So I have to do what I can to break something down to make it as simple as possible. So I can understand it, but also so I can explain it. So this whole aspect of Christianity and what it means to be Christ-like for me is 3 letters. It's WTH. And that's what I learned to live by. And people are like, what the hell? I'm like, no. Walk, teach, heal. That's it.
Love that.
So when you look at that, you go, well, what does that mean? It's like, well, regardless of what religion you study, they all know Christ, right? There's no argument that Christ was actually the Son of God, right? Now, other religions might take a step past that and go, yes, Christ came, Christ was put on a cross, he died, he came back, he kicked ass, he took names. We had what's considered the Dark Ages because that was the golden age, and we know who rewrote the book because it ain't the one of light, it was the light bender that did it. But you look at the Muslim faith, they're like, yeah, we know Christ. We also had Muhammad, and we follow what he's teaching after Christ. And you go, but you guys know Christ. I'm like, you guys know Christ better than most Christians in the United States do. I'm like, well, this is awkward. But if you understand that you are him, he is in you, and he was living as the example of how we're supposed to live. And you accept that, and your sole purpose is to become Christ-like. And when you own it, you're like, oh, as one of my favorite philosophers, Jules Winfield, said in Pulp Fiction, I'm a bad mother. Shut your mouth. And when you know that, you're like, oh, this is who I am. This is who I'm made to be. So go. And then when you accept that you're not made to be like anyone else, the aspect of you being you is crucial, because if you're not you, the puzzle's never going to be complete.
Thank you.
There's always something missing.
Yeah.
And it's one of the biggest flaws that social media has done. And we know why social media in that aspect has been constructed, because it's a ruse to try to control people in so many different aspects. But especially with our younger generations, they're being indoctrinated into a process of don't be you, be like me. You know what? Show your tits off. Take pictures of your bum and sell it on OnlyFans, because this is the way to go. I'm pretty sure that wasn't something that we were doing back in the day.
That's right.
But they're like, oh, don't be like you. Get this surgery done. Have these things done. Don't find what makes you special. Be like something else, because they know that's how they can fracture the network, right? And that's this journey of knowing, look, what makes you special is the fact that you are special, that you are created in the image of greatness. And greatness is what exists in you. So own it and work on perfecting it. And then when you own it, then everything's kind of cool. But you're not going to be like anybody else.
I agree.
I
agree. I want to thank all of our loyal fans that spread across all 50 states and 14 different countries. It's absolutely amazing. Folks, help us keep spreading the word, right? Share your favorite episodes with friends, and make sure that you are liking and subscribing to the Hitstreak on all digital platforms. Thanks again, and we look forward to more. I want to get back here to the root brands, because it's funny, there's a whole lot of trust for most people in, I don't know, things, maybe let's just say sources that the trust hasn't been earned anymore, right? So growing up as a kid, if the doctor said something, it was the law. You know what I mean? And,
unless you were in my house. Okay, all right.
Well, there was just the media, politicians, and healthcare was the source. You didn't question it. Just what it was what it was, and maybe that was earned. I was too young to know. However, it's changed.
Maybe it was programming, and we just started to figure out that construct might be bullshit.
There it is. That's where I was getting at, right? So, but the point is the people out there that would say something like this, oh, I don't know if I believe in that stuff. Well, why don't you question what you believe in with the same authority?
And, it's interesting. It's like, well, I don't think it works. Great. And so one of the things that we did when Christina and I were launching Root is like, great, I'll put a 60-day open container money back guarantee on it. It's like, I'll put my money where my mouth is. Because And it was the interesting part of how I constructed the ecosystem, you know, from the architectural standpoint, but also from a product standpoint. It's like, look, if it doesn't work for you, if you don't like it, I'll give you your money back. I'm not trying to take your money. I'm not trying to sell shit, right? We know why we're here. There's a mission and purpose behind everything we're doing. Why do you think there's a cross in the middle of my logo?
Come on.
Right? Because, I mean, I'm going to show you, because the whole aspect of understanding, satanic worship and this process that we sit in, everything's built on symbolism. It always has been and it always will be. So if you're going to combat symbolism, how do you combat symbolism? One, you mock symbolism, which is why they mock Christ. But if you're going to do it, great. Show who you are. Why is it that Starbucks hasn't done that? Why? What do they have? A serpent? Okay. Right? What are the true underlyings of some of the symbolism of these different brands? Why is it that a lot of them tie back to pedophilia and different rituals when you look at the symbolism that's built in it? And you go, okay. And our designer, you know, of the logo, who's one of Christina's, you know, college best friends, who happens to be one of the top creative directors in New York. When we were doing this, she's like, I got the friends and family discount. It cost me $50,000 to have this done. And she's like, you know, this would have cost you $500,000 if I charged you normal. She's like, do you know how hard it is to get something so simple? I'm like, yeah, but that's the whole point. And I'm like, this is the foundation. So when you look at it, it's like, you put a cross and you spelled root. Whoa, that's really creative. I'm like, go through the process of getting there.
Yeah, that's right.
And knowing that you're going to stick to your guns, you're going to stick to your principles, and you have to show it. It's like, look, here's what we are, and we live it, right? So it's, do you trust the products? No, you shouldn't, because everything else out there is shit.
Yeah.
But trust but verify.
There it is.
And the
trust is earned, man.
It is. And the key in this is from a business standpoint. The spoken word is the most powerful mechanism, which is why you go to church, you're like, wow, this resonated with me, even though they got rid of the organs, which was all the frequencies that were doing all the healing back in the day. So now it's just listen and talk. But if you're talking with your friends, you know, word of mouth marketing is the most powerful mechanism. We know that, you know, podcasters have, you know, the ability to create massive amounts of impact because of being able to talk, the inflection, the message is being delivered. And now podcasts are the most effective mechanism of marketing, but podcasters don't understand their real influence.
That's right.
Right? And if you know that, would it not make sense to build it? And if your goal was to do good, like if I wanted to be Elon Musk, I wouldn't have done what we're doing, because doing it my way is not going to lead to me being worth $500 billion.
Okay.
It's going to allow us, because of the prophecy that was put over Christina and the deal she made with God when she was 5 years old, was that 50% of everything that she made, she was going to give away.
Wow.
So now the crazy thing comes into this. If you talk to any business owner, how much money is a business owner going to spend on marketing and advertising?
Not enough.
From day one. 40 to 50% of their revenue, they're going to inject back into advertising and revenue.
The good ones do, for sure.
The smart ones do, right? Because they keep growing. And as you get larger revenue and you got more spending, you do more dope stuff and advertising and marketing to have more influence in a market.
The goal is to spend more, right?
Right? Spend more, make more, grow more. But what if you understood that we're 6 degrees from 6.5 billion people and we're already all connected?
Come on.
So we don't need to do that anymore. So the greatest investment is in yourself and in people. So what if you took that marketing money and you just said, well, if we're really good at what we do and we stand behind our products, we know the stuff's going to work. So I'm just going to take my marketing budget and put it in the people that create value. So what if a business just said, you know what? Our marketing budget is our customers, because they value us, we value them. And if they share with friends, we're going to reward them. And then if you look at a podcaster and say, you know what, I've got my audience, or if you look at a social media influencer, and this is what we saw 10 years ago when Instagram really started to hit, and companies were like, well, you have 1 million followers on Instagram, we're going to give you hundreds of thousands of dollars. And then 6 months later, they went, well, shit, we got $200 in revenue. Because there's a distinct difference between audience and influence. You might have 50 million followers on Instagram, but if you're just shaking your butt and showing off your boobs, people are going to watch, but they're not going to listen.
That's right.
Right? You might be able to listen, but you can't hear Jimmy. Right? As white man can't jump.
That's right.
You can't hear Jimmy. But if you're listening and you're hearing what's going on, the value in someone of influence is not their direct influence. It's who their audience is also connected to, and being able to connect with your audience. And if you do that on a collaborative basis, the revenue, the impact that's created from that can be massive. But as a company, and you know that it's not you that's going to do it. What Christina's created from a product standpoint is not her. It's not of her. It's of who created her. And if she and I know that what we're doing is predicated not on what we are, it's not about, oh, look at me. It's about, no, this is our mission. This is why we're here. This is why we were brought together. It's prophetic. It's timing. And we know that and we own it. And then if the goal and the deal was, hey, just give half of it away. Okay, but how are you going to do it? Give it to the people that earn it. You create value? We got you. Because if we do our job, you do your job, we all win.
That's right.
Right? And then if you're one of influence, it's a matter of going, wow, we're really good at what we do. This stuff is amazing because my sole purpose at that point is to continue to do dope shit. You're never going to adulterate your products. You're never going to make them cheaper so you can make more money because your purpose isn't making money. We grew up in a veterinary practice of a very unique environment where my mom and dad literally started from zero. And I can remember having conversations with my dad because if you have animals, especially where we live, you know that if you're going to the vet, you're going to get jacked, right?
Yeah.
You're like, you know what? Did I already have an enema today? Because I think they're going to shove something up my bum. And people know that it's like, look, the veterinarian, he's going to charge me $1,000 for something that probably cost me 50. And my parents never did that. My dad was always like, look, we're in a small town, so we need to provide the best service possible, but you don't charge a lot for it. We make a good living, we make our money, we take care of people, and we bartered, right? Like my parents got 2 loans when they first started the practice. I was 2 years old. They got a loan so they could start the business and get the double wide mobile home that they used to create the practice, and the double wide mobile home that we lived in just on top of the hill. And the second loan that they got, the SBA loan, was so I could eat because they didn't have the money. But over decades, and it's funny because, you know, in our small town, when I was in high school, people were like, you're the veterinarian's kid. You're a rich kid. And I'm like, I live in a double wide mobile home and I have a bedroom that I share with my brother and a bunk bed, and my sister has another bed. But when I was 16, they had accumulated enough money and saved up enough to where they were able to build the house that they always wanted. So my younger siblings got to grow up in the house that people looked at, like, oh, well, you've got this. I'm like, no, we worked our ass off and they earned it.
That's right.
But they earned it by being of service. And as we had other veterinarians come and work for my parents, they would be there and then they would go start their own practice, and I would be around different areas and I'd go in and see stuff, and they'd charge 2 to 3 times what my parents are charging. But what was interesting is we live in this small town in the prairie of central Washington, southwest Washington. We had people come from California and Canada to bring their animals to see my dad. And I'm like, hold on a second here. Are we doing medical tourism for animals now?
How many vets did they drive by to get to that one?
And why? Because it was a service. It was the person.
Yeah.
And it was the expense. It was worth driving 3 hours and spending the gas money to come to a place that you knew you were going to be taken care of, and it wasn't going to cost as much.
Yeah.
You go, I'm learning something here.
That's right.
You know, and that's just it. Is businesses should know and behave the way that politicians talk.
Yeah.
Right. Obama used to do this all the time because he was a community organizer and he didn't organize a damn thing other than drone strikes. But he said, we need to invest in our communities. Well, every business is built on the fact that their sole purpose from a marketing standpoint is how you build community. So if you understand and respect that, your sole job is how you should invest in community, in the community that you've developed. Now, here's the most gangster part of this. If we're already all connected, because humanity, that part's already done. We understand. We live in a matrix. We're quantum computers. The whole thing of the last 5 years of social distancing was the fact that your aura reaches out 3 feet on each side when you're healthy. That means if you keep people 6 feet apart, you can fracture the network. That was the whole goal. But if everybody's already connected, and then if I'm a brand and you have a brand, and Ashley has a brand, and we all do different stuff, but we all do dope shit, and we're good at what we do. Why don't we just collaborate to come together to say, hey, look, you do what you do, I do what I do, you do what you do. Our job is to serve all these people. So if we collaboratively do this, we'll all make more money, but we can help people make more money, and we provide better services to it. Yeah. At that point, we don't have a problem anymore. That's where we sit. We're at that precipice, and I'm the one that gets to take spears on a lot of this, because I looked at it because my wife, who is also my psychologist, because she has a master's in science and 3 PhDs and a PsyD and an ADD, she's like, you're oppositionally defiant. I'm like, this is the only diagnosis that I'll actually run with. I'm like, okay, if I'm going to translate that, yes, I hate Satan. So yes, I'm oppositionally defiant, and I know what's controlling this market, and we're going to change it, and someone's got to do it. Because if I put my money where my mouth is, I'm not going to be the one that's sitting on a yacht going, oh, I made $500 million last year. I get to be the one that goes, yeah, I put $250 million in people's pockets, and I can walk down the street going, hey, that guy owns Root. And I'm like, what's up? And they're like, my kid is now normal, used to be autistic, and they're talking now, and they're great because of what you guys did. I'm like, that's cool. Right? It's not, oh, well, I've got all these things. No. It's not what you make, it's what you give. You know, it's the beautiful part of growing up like we did in the ages of the birth of hip hop, right? It's not what you make, it's what you spend. That's some of the language that we used to got. It's like, yeah, but spending can be different things. Where do you put your money? Are you putting it in your community, or are you putting it in people? Because it's always going to come back if you do those things.
That's right.
Own it.
That's right. I mean, again, at the end of the day, does your money have a purpose?
Yeah.
And the people that have the most of it, their money has the most purpose. It's funny how that works.
Bruce Lee said, be like water, right? And when we talk about money, it's liquid.
That's right.
It's supposed to be fluid. It's supposed to flow, right? Money and people should never be stagnant, because if it bacteria and things grow, right? But if it's constantly moving and it's being liquid, then, and you can freeze your assets, right? So Bruce's philosophy resonates in so many different aspects.
Yeah.
And if you know that, there's only so much we each individually need. Yeah. Right? We have wants, but a lot of the stuff that you might really want, once you've achieved some level of affluence, you realize that the things that you wanted and that you're working towards don't really matter anyway. So then those adjust, because there's two things that you want. You want your health, and you want some wealth. So once you have your family taken care of, you've got your needs taken care of, you can do the things that you want to do with your family and your friends. Okay, that part's done. Then what else there is? You want to make sure you have your health. The one thing to control your health is through money. So you do need both.
Absolutely.
But you don't need to accumulate all of this and hoard it.
That's right.
Right? It's a matter of going, and one of my buddies who's made astronomical amounts of cash in commercial real estate, and his son was going to school out at Pepperdine. He was going to law school at Pepperdine. So he's like, he lives here, does tons of development in Florida. And he's like, well, my son's out there. He's past college age. So he's like in his mid-20s. He's like, well, man, I'm going to go hang on the West Coast with my son. So he bought a place out in Malibu. Well, ends up that there's 3 Batmen and Halle Berry that live in the complex and the development he's in. So he's working out with Jon Favreau, because he's working out at him. He's got Robert Downey Jr. and, the 3 Batmen. And he's talking to people, and he's connected to Larry Ellison and, all these guys. And they're like, you're rich. We're wealthy. We have yachts. You don't have a yacht yet. So here's what we need to do. We need to have you do some businesses with us so you can make money like us, so you can get a yacht. Then we can all hang out. So what they do, he's like, well, let's start this thing. He said, there's this aviation gin. So let's buy aviation gin, and then we'll get Ryan Reynolds. We'll pay him a couple $1 million over 3 years. We'll give him 1% equity. We'll give him an option to buy up to 10% equity. And then let's put him as the face behind this and market it. So they bought aviation gin for $60 million. And they called their friends in New York. And this is the thing. Everybody's connected when you have these relationships.
Yep.
They did the deal on a napkin. Their friends were like, here's the $60 million to buy it. Took them 6 months to finish all the paperwork for it. By the time they had done the 6 months to get the paperwork done, they'd already sold more gin than they had in the previous 2 years. And Ryan increased his equity to the 10%. 3 years later, they sold it for $600 million. And they go, okay, we made some money. But people look at, Ryan Reynolds did this. No, he didn't. He was just the face of it. The same thing with the Kardashians. The Kardashians don't own the stuff that they're doing.
Right.
It's the people behind them. It's this syndicate of people that know how to play the game. But they're like, okay, we're going to do these things. We're going to put this all together. We'll give you some equity. You can be the face of it. You can go promote it like you own it. You don't own the whole thing, but here you go. Go run, go have fun, go play. But it was this interesting aspect of they're playing the game of, if we do this collectively, we all win greater. And the problem is in family dynamics, even with my sister and my brother and I, we all do stuff independently. It would be a lot smarter for us to come together and go, okay, we got this. I got my wife with her family. We could even be more dynamic and build greater communities. But there's the aspect of familiarity breeds contempt. Because I remember this guy that I follow, there was a carpenter. And in his hometown, they're like, oh man, that dude's a carpenter. I mean, he's just driving nails and making tables and stuff. But when he started walking around other places, they're like, you're the son of God. They're like, wait a minute, this is the Savior. But in his hometown, they're like, Jesus, man, that dude, I mean, he wouldn't even use new nails. He was using old rusty nails. And then, what? No, that dude was a bad carpenter. He didn't even show up for work most of the time because he was always helping the homeless and shit. What are we talking about? I mean, we had to take this philosophy, and I built this entire infrastructure understanding that in order to reach the world, we don't have to leave our county, right? We don't have to leave Williamson and Davidson County. If we want to connect with everybody, we're having a conversation here. We can connect with everybody in the world from this chat right here in our own backyard, and we live 7 minutes apart, right? But we had to go develop something and prove it in 80 countries over 5 years and prove that, yes, this stuff works. To be able to come home, to sit with our friends and those around us and go, see, because at home, look at me. My friends know me. They're like, bro, no. And they know Christina is Christina. But when she met the Pope, he kissed her hand.
Let's go.
You go, that's a flex. Right? And that's this interesting aspect of knowing your position, knowing who you are, but knowing who you're made to work with and connect to. And you find those pieces and just run with it, own it. And then it becomes fun, because then people are like, how did this happen? I'm like, I didn't do it. It's not about me. It's not about us. It's about this greater mission. So when someone looks at it and says, well, I don't know about this, I'm like, yeah, you shouldn't, but you should try it. And if it doesn't work, just tell me it doesn't work and we'll give you your money back. You know what's crazy in this? If you look at retail businesses, their return ratios are like 10 to 20%. Ours are less than 0.3.
No doubt. I believe it.
And you go, wait a minute, I took one of these and this is outstanding. It's like, yeah, wait till you try the coffee. Wait till you try Give Me Back My Youth or Relive Greens or da-da-da-da-da.
Yeah, the greens are awesome too.
Yeah, and they're dope. And you go, why is this different? It's like, because of the engineer that did it and all of these things.
The Hitstreak is powered by our partners at HitLab Creative Studios. Whether it's launching your brand new podcast, rebranding your current podcast, or taking advantage of any of their other content packages specifically for your social media needs, the HitLab is a one-stop shop for you. Visit hitlabstudio.com for more. There are a couple of things I want to highlight that you talked about. One is beliefs, and we're going to come back to that in just a minute. But the other thing is, you know, when you try things, we were having a conversation over Christmas with when family was over. And, you know, Christmas is the one time a year that, like, we eat things that aren't pretty clean, right? So, like, the Christmas cookies, that's grandma's old recipe, loaded with sugar. And, but, like, the reason I'm telling this is because here's what I was telling my in-laws, that this is so cool because, like, you know, one of the things that I learned about myself is what works for me is fasting. So I eat once a day. That's it. Right. Me too. And it's all these things that help me get through that. But I learned a lot about myself by doing that. But when you eat clean, and then you don't, you have a black and white comparison of yourself on how you feel when you had sugar versus when you didn't have too much sugar. And like my knees, my freaking toes, everything hurt. And I felt like shit when I had too much sugar versus when I don't.
You want to know what's even crazier than that? Get outside this country.
Oh,
go to the Middle East, go to Europe and eat the food there.
Yeah.
And then come back here and try to eat good here. And you're like, what is going on?
People don't know how bad they feel.
They don't know how bad they feel. They don't know how bad good is here. Like,
I didn't know how bad I felt.
No, and you're like, wait a minute. Oh, I'm bloated. I'm inflamed. You're like, I look good right now. And then you get over there. Like we were with Andrea Bocelli and his foundation for his white party. Not like Diddy. There was, I will tell you, no baby oil at this party. It's okay. It was cool. And so we're over there. And I don't eat pasta. I don't eat pizza. unless it's bad time, because one, I know my metabolism because I took my genetic panel and I know how I should eat. But we're over there and you're in Italy.
Mm-hmm.
You're like, you're eating pasta and you're eating pizza.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, people talk about being gluten intolerant, and I know I'm not gluten intolerant, but I hate glyphosate because it's freaking toxic and it's poison. But over there, they don't have that.
Yeah.
They don't add potassium bromate into what they use to make pasta. So we're eating spaghetti and having the bolognese and having a pizza. And I'm like, God, I feel good.
Mm-hmm.
And then we went out. We were going to go down the street to this little farmer's market, and we hop on the bike. And people are riding past us. And I'm like, God, all these girls are really skinny. They look anorexic. I'm like, oh, shit, they're normal.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, that's how you're supposed to be, because they're eating like I was just eating, but they're active and they're not getting all these chemicals and pollutants. So their wastes are like this,
Yeah.
right? Versus what we have here. And you're like, what's the difference between, yeah, we're inflated.
Yeah.
Our economy's inflated and our bodies are inflated and inflamed.
That's right.
And so, yeah, when you do it here, and this is the foundation of what we're doing, of why does root have its name? You have to get back to your roots. Why does clean slate have a name of clean slate? Why? Because you've got to clean up the mess first.
That's right.
Right? And the symbolism of a product and the name of a product should coincide with what it's doing. Like Diddy Party should not be a Diddy Party. It should be butt hurt. Right? It's like,
hold on, I gotta give you another.
Where's the fart sound for that one, right? Because could you imagine this? This is kind of the take on how that whole system works, right? And I was talking about this with people the other day. It's like, what happens if you go into an environment, you go to this party, you're like, man, next morning you're like, man, that was a great party. I don't remember everything, but my butt hurts a little bit. And you're like, you know what? It was kind of a good time, so I'm gonna go. I got invited to another party, and you go back to the party. And you're like, man, this is a great party. And the next day you wake up and you're like, my butt hurts and I'm farting baby oil. And you're like, I don't think I'm going to go back to this party again. You got me twice. You're not going to get me the third time. And you go, huh. Like we're working on some collabs with Russell Brand, and people are like, Russell Brand. It's like, how come no one's asked Russell? Like, and have you went to the party, but did you go to the after party? Did you go to the after party? And we were in Boulder, Colorado in April for the University of Colorado spring game with that Deion Sanders guy and, you know, Warren Saps. So Warren's hilarious and he's so cool. So hopefully we can go fishing. But it was funny because Pac-Man Jones was there. We know Pac-Man used to play football here. So
from Titans, yeah.
We don't know everybody there, you know, because we're kind of outliers. And Pac-Man's there. We're hanging out with Pac-Man. And Christina's like, I know you. And she doesn't know celebrities because it's the greatest, funniest flex. Side note to this. We were in New York a little bit before. We're having dinner. And Giannis Antetokounmpo comes in, sits down next to us in the booth next to us. We're at a little table with like 5-6 people. And Giannis sits down with his manager. And Ted, my partner, and Christina, we're all sitting there. And I look at Ted. I'm like, you going to go talk to him and say hi and introduce her? Or am I going to? He's like, I got it. He said, so you don't have to. So you can come later. So he goes over. He's talking to the manager, says, what's up? And we're like, hey, babe, go talk to him. So she walks over to Giannis. Giannis, great kid. You know, he stands up. And Giannis is 7 feet tall.
Yeah.
She looks at him. I got the picture. She looks at him. She's like, hi, I'm Christina. Do you play baseball?
Oh, no.
And he's like, no, basketball. And she didn't hear it because there's a little noise. She's like, baseball? He's like, no, basketball. And I walked behind him and was like, yo, kind of nice to be in an environment where someone doesn't know who you are, right? He's like, this is kind of cool. But I forgot what I was saying before that because that was just funny. But the ability to be in an environment and just be there and be around people, and you're like, we're just people. And with the parties, with Pac-Man, we're talking, and this is when all the stuff was starting to come out about these parties, these white parties, and you know the rumblings were going. And so Christina, being who she is, because you've had a chance to chat with her, she has a soul unlike anyone else, and she's like, she will find the best in everybody. She was in Pritchard, Alabama, you know, when she was working on her psychology degree. She was the only white person in that town working with pedophiles and sex offenders and gang members. And she found, you know, points of connection with all of them. She will do that with everybody. But we're talking, and She's like, he never did that. And Pac-Man comes up to her, puts his hand on her shoulder. He's like, he did all that shit. And then some. And it's all on tape. He said, I was at the parties. I didn't go in the bedroom, but I was at the parties. That shit went on. And it was bad. And it's all going to come out. But it's those things that people are like, oh, you were at the Diddy party. Well, yeah, those were the biggest freaking parties in Miami. Everybody was at the party. Yeah. It wasn't a matter of were you at the party. It's like, were you at the party after the party? And were you at the party after the party? Because that's when stuff got bad. That's when stuff got evil. That's when really, really stuff. And Usher's like, here's Justin Bieber for the weekend. Why don't you have your way? And why don't you see what kind of influence you can have? And you wonder how that kid had problems.
Yeah.
You're like, I wonder if you treat him like a marionette and then you string him up like he's a lollipop and you put a stick in his, you go, I think that's going to have an impact over time. Right?
Just a little bit.
Yeah, it's like, man, I don't know why he was acting out so much. Well, maybe he had a little bit of a demon in him. And it's like, look, and what we're seeing in this aspect of you have so many people that have been around in this environment and they start to get the feeling of light. Right. And they're like, Russell's a great example of it. He's like, look, he was married to Katy Perry. God knows what that environment is because of the programming she's gone through. But he's like, no, I found Christ.
Yeah.
You know, and people are like, oh, well, he did this. I'm like, yeah, and a lot of people have done a lot of crazy shit, but we all have this path of redemption and figuring out who we are. You can't judge somebody for where they were if they didn't know or they were handled into this pathway of doing things. It's a matter of, great, what are you doing to be of service, to put a hand on them and go, come here.
Yeah.
Come with me. Let me show you something. And it goes to the aspect of darkness and understanding physics, right? Of science and religion is people that don't understand what the Illuminati really were. Those were the scientists that were trying to understand physics and quantum physics and chemistry to understand the world that God created. Okay. These were not the people that were trying to manipulate everything. They were like, this is dope what he's done. Let's try to understand this. But if you look at the laws of physics, and as Eric Weinstein talks about, he's a physicist. He's like, physics is not something studied. Physics is something applied. So if you look at the law of physics and you apply that to your spirituality, and one of the things that you're taught as a kid is to fear the dark.
Yep.
Right? It's like, don't go in the dark. You don't know what's in the dark. But physics states that there's no such thing as darkness. There's only a lack of light. So if darkness exists within you, what is that? It's only a lack of light.
Yeah.
Well, who is light? What is light? Well, light is God and Christ. But because we live in a world of duality, there's also the false light, also known as the light bender or as the great deceiver. They both exist in this world simultaneously right now, and you're given the choice because your free will is what this whole thing is battled for. So you choose. Now, is it not possible that at some point you were misconstrued and at some point you chose poorly and you're walking a path and you were maybe supposed to go left, but the signs didn't tell you to go left or right. They just were there. And you didn't take, as Robert Frost said, the road less traveled by. You said, everybody's going this way right now. And this is all honestly Freemasonry, because there's two paths to Freemasonry. There's the York Rite and there's the ancient Scottish Rite. People don't know this, that there's actually two paths.
Okay.
So you have the York Rite, which is what the Scottish Rite people will tell you is the old way. No one goes this way. That path will lead you to the Knights Templar. We know who the Knights Templar were. The other way has 32 degrees of a process. And what they'll tell you is this is where the scientists, this is where the cool people are going. You can get to 32 degrees and then they watch what you're doing. Like, oh, well, there's an opportunity to be a 33rd if you're really shady as hell and you want all the things that you've ever wanted in this life, and you'll get everything you want. You want celebrity, you want money, you want all this stuff. All you have to do is make this agreement. There goes your soul. What if you're walking down that path and you eventually realize it's like, oh shit, I went the wrong way? Is it okay to turn around? Is it okay to say, I made a boo-boo?
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Is it okay for society to judge that because someone realized that, oh man, I really jacked this shit up?
Mm-hmm.
No, it should be our job, those of us that are of light, to say, let me provide a little illumination on that. Because if you are going to be afraid of the dark, if you're willing to understand that you are of light, you should be the one that's willing to go into those areas that lack illumination to bring illumination to darkness. Because that's what Christ did. That's what Christ was, the one that went and sat down with tax collectors. He sat down with the prostitutes. He ate with them and said, not, hey, let's hang out. You guys are cool. Let's go to the club. No, he was the one sitting down with them and going, you know what? There's a different way. Come check this out. Come check out my way. And we know, and we live in an area where we live in one of the primary hubs for sex trafficking in this country.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of it goes through the places of religious worship that everybody thinks are Christian, unfortunately.
Right.
And I have friends that are former special operations that are on teams that go get those kids.
Yeah.
And they do bad things to bad people when needed.
Mm-hmm.
What if those guys were not willing to go into the dark and see things and experience things that human eyes probably shouldn't experience? What if they were afraid of the darkness that was there and they didn't go do it? Those kids are going to be tortured, murdered.
The dark would grow like crazy.
And it's going to continue to expand to take over everything, and then we would have OnlyFans. Oh shit, we do. So in order to dispel the lack of light in this world, you have to be willing to be the light, to go into those areas, knowing that many people are unwilling to stare into the abyss, knowing that the abyss is going to stare back. But when you understand that you are the one bringing light to the darkness, and they put it in so many different movies, even the ones with Will Smith. It's funny that they did it with Will Smith. All of these things that are sending you messages. Why is it Will Smith? What are you doing with Will? What have you done with Will? It's like, he looks like a lollipop too. He's had one. And you go, man, this is the symbolism in the world that we live in. And then when you look at it and you sit back with your wife and go, okay, what's our job? What's our purpose? What am I made for?
Mm-hmm.
How are we supposed to participate in this? How do we build those principles? And knowing that we are going to get filleted publicly by evil people that want to take away from what we're doing. This has been the hardest thing for me, because for 10 years, my wife and I have had people attacking us because they don't want us doing what we're doing.
Yeah, I can imagine.
And I was when I was with my royal family member friend in the UAE, and we were going over this, he looked at me. He's like, you don't have investors. I'm like, no. He's like, you've done this on your own. Yes, my wife and I. And he's like, and what you're doing, he said, you're getting sued a ton, aren't you?
Mm-hmm.
You're getting attacked. I'm like, you're damn right.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, I spent 2.5 days in county in Cleveland over a $200 fine because I didn't know it. And I spent 2.5 days in county playing spades and dominoes. And it's a good thing my pastor taught me how to play spades and dominoes. And you can see, you're like, I got you.
Mm-hmm.
But you go, okay. And it was funny because when they checked me in and I got my mugshot, they don't let you take a smiling photo for a mugshot. They don't allow it. I tried to smile. I was like, and they're like, no, you can't do that. I'm like, okay, fine, I'll be serious. But
we try to do silly faces. They won't let you do it.
No, they won't do it. And they check me in, they take your wallet and put money on commissary. And the girl's counting out my cash. She's like, and they have a little card that says, what I did. And I get 2 days. I'm like, okay, I get to spend the weekend and play cards. And she counts my cash. She's like, you have $2,000 in cash in your wallet right now, and you have a $200 fine. I'm like, yeah, I didn't know. I'm like, can I give you $1,000 and go home? She's like, no, but what the fuck are you doing here? I'm like, she's like, look, we don't have people like you in here. So I went and spent 2 days with the misdemeanors. And it was interesting because I was with 12 guys and I was the only one there for the first time. which spoke a lot. But the interesting part of being in an environment, talking to guys, and the CEOs were like, look, go in here, shut up, sit in your spot. Because we had cells, but there was no door. So it was like open. Everybody was like free commune. Mm-hmm. The felons had a different area.
Yeah.
And they were freaking vicious. And it was one of the most insightful times, because I got to see different aspects of the human condition that you would never get access to without being there. And when I was done for my 48 hours, and some of the guys were like, bro, you have serious street cred now, because you can tell everybody that you spent time in county in Cleveland, and anybody that knows is going to know you're hard. I'm like, that's right. I'm from the country. But you look at it and people are like, you went to jail. I'm like, you have to understand the process of doing it. And what's crazy is we're ending a bunch of this stuff, and the attorney for these people did it. He was bragging to my attorney that he bought the clerk to actually have them throw me in for 2 days. He was bragging that he bribed a judge and a clerk. And I'm like, it's been so frustrating, because I've been dealing with this for 10 years, right? Of just getting attacked. And now we're like, let's just get this thing settled and everything. Because all they want is money, and they want to think that they have power over us. And I'm like, money shmoney. Yeah. Like, they're like, and it was funny because I was in court, and they're like, you did $98 million in sales over the last couple of years. I'm like, and me being me, I'm like, actually, no, we did more than that. Mm-hmm. And they're like, asshole. But I'm like, can you ask the question that I gave away 50 mil? Because they're like, you have all this money. I'm like, no, I gave away half of it. Oh, I'm sorry. And the IRS hates that, right? They're like, no one does that. They're like, we got you. I'm like, sorry, I don't have the money. I gave it away. Yeah. I'm like, I'm not here to make money. And it's funny in that aspect. When you get attacked by the government, you get attacked by people. I'm like, no, I'm Christian. They're like, what? I'm like, yeah, I don't tithe. I don't give money to the church. I give it to people. Because that's what Christ would do. They don't know what to do. They're like, what? I'm like, no, the business structure is all set up to do this. They're like, well, you can't do that. I'm like, why not? Did anyone say that I didn't have to keep it all and you tax me on it? Is it more fun for me to just give it away and watch people change their lives and have a lifestyle that they never thought they could have? And the biggest problem that we have in our community is people think that, they're making more money than they're worth because they created the value themselves. Is that not a greater lesson for my kids and for my community to go, hey, if you help people, if you find something you like, if it works and you like it and you share it with your friends, you create that value, you should be rewarded for it. Mm-hmm. And if you create this cascade, you should be rewarded and everybody else should be rewarded for it. And companies should invest in you. Companies should invest in their communities. And they hate that. I'm like, okay, throw spears because I'm okay.
That's right.
It's like, lose a little blood. It's like fasting a little bit. And you go, I'm going to make more.
That's right.
You could drag me on a cross for a little bit too. I know how that played out. I might not get to come back the same way he did, but he was my example. Yeah. So, and that's the interesting part. They put him on a cross. He died. But what happened? Mm-hmm. His spirit came back. Mm-hmm. All of ours do. Because we're not physical.
That's right.
We are the personification of the spirit within us, and we are the projection of that which is what's in us. And Absolutely. That what we intend to see. And that's the fun part of being the example. It's like, why do you do this? It's because this is what I'm supposed to be. Well, I'm not supposed to be you. You're not supposed to be me. But you can learn from me. I'm going to learn from you, and we're going to learn from him. And then we'll all figure it out together. And then we'll have fun.
So, what people believe is based on the information that they've consumed, right? So literally, like the main media is basically literally called paid programming, right? We've heard it our entire lives, right? So it's paid programming, and the easiest way to change your beliefs is to just get new information, right? And I think that one of the reasons that we trust capsules from a pharmacy, but not something that you don't have to get a prescription for. I believe that the reason that is so hard for folks is because I was one of those people at one time too. It's hard to admit you're wrong. It's hard to admit you were wrong. It's hard to admit you're actually mad at yourself for trusting something for so long.
You're a husband. You're a father. Hardest thing at home is telling your wife.
You were right.
I allowed you to be correct. I might have delayed the process and understanding a little bit, but I gave you the opportunity to be accurate in what you were saying. Now, I'm not saying that I was off in my judgment or my behavior or my commentary, but you were accurate in what you said.
Dude, it's funny, man. Like, because with the stuff that we resist, the knowledge that we resist, like if you can get over the ego within yourself to say I was wrong, and like what's on the other side is beautiful, dude. It's like, again, it's life changing.
Well, and it's the interesting aspect of resistance in work, right? Is the stronger you try to grip onto something and hold on to it, the harder it's going to be. Like if you're playing golf or you're playing baseball, right? Because you played baseball, right? You played a little bit. You were good at it, right? Better than most.
Back. Yeah,
a long time ago. So, what size bat did you play with?
Well, when in college I swung a 33 or a 34, and when I got to pro ball, the guys looked at me and they're like, because I was a bigger guy as far as like muscles and stuff working out. And they were like, dude, you going to swing a man's bat or what? And I was like, well, what do you mean? They were like, dude, like mass has an effect here. So if you can control a bigger bat, the ball's going to go further. And I was like, really? Okay. Didn't know that, right? So I got new information, put a bigger bat in my hand, and all of a sudden I became a better hitter.
So, and when you did that, did you squeeze the shit out of the handle?
No, I did not.
Grip it and just hold onto it because it was bigger and heavier, and it was heavier, so you just got to just grind it?
I just wanted to get it started and let it do the work, right? That mass.
You had to let go,
right?
Yeah. You get it started. You know the path that it's supposed to be on, but once you just turn, you just let it go.
That's right.
And it's those that are most effective at that process are successful more often. And the beautiful part of baseball is it is one of the best examples of life for people, right? Because, and especially as an entrepreneur, right? And I think this is one of the things that's so important for kids to play sports, not because of learning to succeed. And this is the problem with the chaos is you learn to fail.
That's right.
Baseball is a complete sport. Same thing for softball. And like Ashley and I were talking about this, and she's like, you were never present. I'm like, I was 8 years older than you. And it's like, do you remember when you were a kid? My dad and I were your softball coaches. But if you can succeed 29% of the time, you're pretty damn good.
The Hitstreak is powered by Team Hyder. Team Hyder has been serving you for 11 years and has racked up over 20 national and local awards for excellence in all areas. When it comes to finding the right health plan, we need to consider your family's needs and your family's budget. That's what we do to serve you. To look further and to book an appointment, visit teamhyder.com. We say in our house, you're not learning to fail, you're actually learning to grow.
And you should always fail forward. That is the one lesson that I've learned from some of my partners is like, fail forward. Don't look at failure as, oh my God, you stopped and this sucks. It's like, no, you're going to fail.
That's right.
Because if you don't continue to fail, you're never going to learn to perfect it. And it's the one thing that I try to go over with my kids, because everybody wants to talk about, oh, well, I had this happen to me as a child, and this happened to me in life, and this happened to me. And I'm like, okay. And my two oldest sons love anime, right? Which I'm like, is that hentai? I'm like, oh no, different. And I'm like, one of the most deadly weapons ever made in history happens to be the katana, the samurai sword. And if you understand what it takes to make this amazing weapon, you take steel and you throw it in the fire and you get it really freaking hot and you take it out and you pound the hell out of it and you throw it back in the fire and you heat it up and damn near melts. You take it out and you pound the hell out of it again. You throw it back in the fire. You do this a few times. And then after you take it out of the fire, you start grinding it, just grinding down on it. And through this process, two things happen. You either break it and it collapses and crumbles. You have to start over. Or it's forged into something that is damn near indestructible and becomes a weapon that everybody on earth knows that if the right person is possessing that, you're losing the battle. Because regardless of how many times you shoot them, if they're within 20 to 30 feet, you're dead. That's life. You will be forged by the fire, the furnace that you're given, or you're going to collapse and crumble. Mm-hmm. You choose. You can make excuses over your environment, or you can sit back on that walk and go, damn, I'm going through some shit right now. But if you realize that that's part of your journey, that you're forging your perfect peace, that you get to a point eventually where you pause, and the only way that you understand your real view is to change your perspective. So if you have a different perspective and you pause and you look back and you go, well, that's why I did this. Because it's not about you. If the 3 principles are walk, teach, heal, as you're on that walk, the only way that you can become a good teacher is through experience. It's through what you've learned and what you've been through, which gives you that perspective that allows you to work with someone else or teach someone else. And then through that same process, you learn that you can heal. But then you also have the ability to heal others. And that's the part that's lost in our belief system here, is the fact that, yeah, Christ was the example. He was the teacher. And they're like, but he healed people. And I'm like, yeah, and how do you think we're made? We do the same thing if you understand who made you.
Let's go.
And that's that fun part of this journey and this process of just own it and know you're a badass because God made you for a reason.
And he only made one, baby.
Yeah,
he only made one.
We're one of one.
I heard one of my Brooke Thomas said from the stage one time, and it's very powerful. She said, "I believe that the definition of impact is when you take your God-given uniqueness and apply it to the marketplace."
Yes.
And I was like, love that. I was like, that couldn't have said it any better. That's right. That's right.
It's like, okay, noted.
That's exactly right. And it's and you just, again, you guys just keep. I was always taught income is the outcome, not the objective, right? And you guys are living.
Income is a byproduct of service. Outcomes create income. It's the one thing I try to teach. It is the foundation to products. It is the foundation to businesses or service. If you produce outcomes, regardless of what it is, if you produce outcomes, you're going to make income, because if you're producing quality outcomes, someone's going to find value in producing those outcomes. The byproduct of that is the acquisition of whatever product or service it is that produces those outcomes. The medium primarily used in that is paying for it in some way or another, which produces income. It's linear mathematics, but if you're ADD, you understand that. If you're not, you're like, wait a minute, is that 1 + 1 + 3 equal what? But those of us that are functioning properly go, I get that.
Dude, it's all I'm hearing is like, I've never heard growth defined as just your ability to solve problems, but that is how you grow, isn't it? Right? Yeah. By solving problems. And again,
and experiencing the problems. You can't be afraid to go through or experience problems or trauma or life.
That's right.
Because life ain't easy. I mean, try being a gazelle in the middle of Africa. You're going to have some trauma, right? And we had one of the college basketball players I used to train a long time ago. He's from Liberia, one of the most physical freaks I've ever met. And when we met Wu, I was talking to him about his childhood, growing up in Liberia. He's like, when we were at home, we would go out at night and we would find the big tree, and the lion would be sleeping at the bottom of the tree, and we would sneak up on the lion. And we would sneak up on him and we would smack him in the nuts. And then we would run and we would hear the lion go, oh. I'm like, you have a different perspective on life that I might want to try at some point. And like, my childhood was, I'm going to take some roosters and some flies and go down to the creek and try to catch some fish. And you're smacking lions in the nuts. And my outcome was, I might catch fish, I might not. Yours is, if you do it wrong, you might be a meal.
I just added an item to my bucket list I didn't know I needed.
Yeah, right? You're like, okay, we're going on an African safari, babe. You're staying home tonight. What are we doing? We're smacking lions in the nuts.
That's right.
Who's coming with me? And even the locals are going, nope. It's like, Jeff tried to do that. He's not here anymore.
I'm just envisioning that scene in Cars where they go tractor tipping, and then they run from them.
See, that would have been the outtakes that Larry the Cable Guy is going, smack!
That's right. That's
He's
right.
like, which one was that? That was the race car. It's like, all right, cool.
Well, Clayton, like, so a couple things. First of all, like, again, we got to continue the conversation. Like, I have to have the Root brands in our life. I want to help promote it. I want all the people that keep up with what old Nick's doing to know as much about it as possible and have access to it, because I truly believe in it. That was the whole purpose for bringing you here. You guys were nice enough to expose me to it, and it was like, dude.
See, and this is the cool part, is I can expose myself and not get arrested.
That's right. Well, so all right.
It's like, you exposed yourself to me, and I liked it.
It is. So that's the joke Brad always says when he's talking about virtual training. He's like, if you just show people videos, you're exposing them, not training them. He's like, an exposure will get you arrested, unless you're old Nick over there, because then there's lack of evidence.
But that's also why he's in Vegas.
That's right.
Right? He's like, exposure here is actually just part of the process.
That's
like,
right.
Come to Nashville, and it's the same. The difference is there's 7 women for every guy. And you're like...
Well, dude, it's again, it's absolutely fantastic. Like, you're one of those people that, like, it's like, all right, man, once a quarter we got to come in here. I got to know what's going on, what you guys doing, because I feel like it's just every quarter, like, life change. You guys are into so many new things.
Well, here's what I want to do. We'll do a challenge. What foundations or organizations do you like to support? What's the mission behind what you guys are doing?
So it's diverse. So the biggest place. So obviously, we love to give back to the community through a lot of the places. New Hope Community Church here in Nashville. Pastor Josh Heisman, they do a great job. We love supporting a lot of those the missions that the church is behind. Sandlot Sports is a local 501c3 that my dad and I operate that gives back to local youth area baseball, as well as the Old Timers Baseball Association. Same thing. Our 87th banquet's in a couple weeks. We're giving out scholarships and everything else. The other 2 big ones, the Sentinel Foundation, right, fighting against child trafficking.
Sentinel. Yes, that's
They're doing it. They're going and getting them.
What's her name? The head of Sentinel. I've got her number. I don't have my phone on me.
So, and Matt Murphy.
Some of the videos
buddy.
that they've done. She was here. She was showing me some of the videos they had of being down on the border with what they're doing with drones and showing people come across the border and what's going on. If people actually got to see the stuff that they're seeing, it would make their stomach turn. Oh,
the original CEO and president, Matt and Glenn, have been on the show multiple times. Matt was literally just in the chair a couple weeks ago. So we're all in on that. And then in the Tim Shaw Foundation, T. Shaw Strong. That's where most of our stuff goes.
So here's what we're going to do, and we're going to put our money where our mouth is.
Okay.
Because we're going to create the account for you for the show, but then here on some of these links, we're going to create links specific for each of those organizations. So if people listen to this and they're like, "Yo, I want to try this stuff," that 15+% of whatever's purchased residually is going to go to each of those organizations.
Dude, I want to start cutting ads. Like, I want to run them all over the place. You know what I'm saying?
And this is the point of finding causes and finding aligned missions, is saying, look, yeah, we have these things, they're great, but here's how we apply these in different areas. But the revenue from these can go to support causes and should, like with what Sentinel's doing. And especially with what they were doing in North Carolina. I mean, they were bringing in Chinooks and some of the stuff. And what's crazy is what we're hearing a lot of is some of the special operations community with what they've been doing. And what's crazy is our cousin, Brett, who was my crazy cousin, because we grew up in the country. He's the crazy one.
All right, I got to meet that guy.
So get this quick story on this. So my cousin, he would come down on our shooting range, and he would be out with the AKs. We'd be shooting, having fun. He's the one rolling on the ground, shooting targets and everything. And both of my uncles, my dad's brothers, were both Navy pilots. So my cousin, being the crazy one, he was a swimmer in high school and played soccer. Ended up getting accepted to go to the Naval Academy. So went to the Naval Academy. Ended up in Buds 226. So went through Buds because he could swim really good and he's kind of a beast. He had no problem going through Buds. Ends up on Team 2 and Team 10. And one of the last times we saw him, we were all together for Thanksgiving. And this is a perspective that I don't think anyone's heard in the story, and I'm gonna have him pulled to talk about this. But so I can remember being together, and he had all these photos laid out on the counter. And there's all these red triangles in this ravine and stuff. And I'm like, Brett, what is this? He said, well, this is just declassified so we can talk about it. He said, but we had this op in Afghanistan, and one of the twins you had a couple guys that got disconnected and things went bad. One of the twins, Marcus Luttrell, had to go into evasion, and shit went bad. Ended up running down this hill. Taliban chasing him. Ends up hiding in this Afghani village. And the Afghanis, their culture is they will shelter a foreigner. It's what they do. And the Taliban came down and was like, "Look, we want the American. We will be back in the morning." And they're like, "No one here. He ain't here." And they're like, "We'll be back in the morning." And they came back the next morning with a bunch of cash. It's like, "We want the American," because they knew what they were going to do to him, because they'd already killed the 3 others. And they're like, "He ain't here." And so they came back that afternoon, like, "We want the American, and we're killing everybody if you don't." And they're like, "No." And so they sheltered him, and then he went through this story of how they extracted him and how things went bad. And my cousin was in a Chinook, and the other Chinook got shot down. And I'm like, "Oh, shit, that's nasty." He's like, "Yeah, it went really bad." And so a couple years go by, and this movie comes out, Lone Survivor, Mark Wahlberg. It's a great story. I'm watching this movie, and I'm like, "Yo, Brett, am I watching what happened?" He's like, "Yeah, that was it." I'm like, "So you're alive because the dude with the RPG shot the one on the left and not the one on the right?" He's like, "Yeah." I'm like, "That's some gangster shit, bro." And so I was talking to him last week. I'm like, because he finished in the teams because he's got a couple kids. His wife is in the Air Force. She outranks him, so she's an analyst for the agency. And he tried to go in the agency, but he was too honest. It was amazing. He failed his lie detector test for the agency because he was too honest.
Yeah.
And they're like, "You can't do this." He's like, "Why not?" They're like, "You have to learn to lie, bro."
Yeah.
But he's like, "Well, screw this. I'm going into medicine." So he went to medical school, finished his MD, talked to him last week. I'm like, "Brett, what's going on?" I'm like, "You done medical school?" Because we haven't done a good job of staying connected to all of my family because we've been so busy. He's like, "Yeah, I finished my MD." He said, I'm in New York right now in the Bronx working with disadvantaged kids with psychiatry because I'm doing a psych residency." He's like, "Bro, did you see all the stuff on psychedelics?" I'm like, "Yeah." He's like, "I was one of the 3 active operators to do MDMA and psilocybin to deal with all the stuff that we went through." And he's like, "You know about ibogaine? Now it's a big thing, and we're working with Beyond, have been since last year, and building our collab with them." He's like, "I'm the guy." I'm like, "Hold on. So you were on Team 10. You served in Operation Red Wing, and you're the only one of this group that's actually become an MD with a psych background and has done all these things that everyone is talking about. You're from the teams, and now you're a doctor." And I was like, "Of course you were." I'm like, "And this is why I had to reach out to my cousin at this time because of what's going on." I'm like, "Oh, of course this is how this played out." But it's interesting because of the importance of giving, but also how to create value. Because when you have these service professionals that's literally sacrifice everything, and you can look at it for first responders too. I mean, because I never worked in that environment because, as I went over before, I'm oppositionally defiant. I don't take orders very well if I don't agree with them. And you have a bunch of guys that are the highest level adrenaline junkies that you can find. I mean, you talk about ultimate cowboys. But what do they do when they're done? They have to find purpose, right? They have to find a way to still be of service in aspects, and being able, like what Sentinel's doing now, and some of my other friends and probably some people that are doing some of those same things in this area around what Sentinel's doing. But knowing that each of us, we have our initial path. It's like playing sports, right? You're an athlete, and then there comes the time where you don't get to be an athlete anymore, right? What are you really going to do? And figuring out how to be of service in those communities and to address the issues that have been put on a lot of these areas of service. And it's like being in the UAE. And since we've talked long enough, now I'll get you banned. So
Come on.
the biggest issue in the Middle East is actually caused by the military-industrial complex. Because when I was with my friends over there, and they had a buddy, 3 guys come sit down with us after we had chatted for a bit. One of them is a former general in the Kuwaiti army, and 2 others, come from the oil industry. And the former general owns 3 refineries, one in Libya, one in Azerbaijan, which is my favorite country on the planet, and one in Kuwait.
Okay.
And they're like, oh yeah, he owns these outright. And each one of them was worth about $4.5 billion. I'm like, we can be friends. So we're talking, and they're like, oh yeah, we own a cancer clinic in Iraq. And they're in Kuwait, but they have this cancer clinic in Iraq. I'm like, oh yeah, you guys are dealing with a ton of lymphoma, aren't you?
Mm.
And they went, how do you know that? Because I didn't say cancer. I was like, yeah, you have a lymphoma problem with that entire population. They're like, how do you know that? I'm like, well, depleted uranium causes lymphoma, it causes diabetes, and it causes these issues. And those are the problems there, because when the U.S. military invaded Iraq, after September 11th in the Gulf War, they were using depleted uranium rounds, and we nuked the entire Middle East intentionally to kill you guys all off so we could take all your oil. But we failed. And they're like, yeah, because they didn't understand our culture. Because we can get shot and we recover. He said, Americans get shot, they collapse. Because we're stronger than you guys are. Because their diet is better, their environment is better, and they were fighting for purpose.
It's hard to hear.
It is. And they're like, and it was crazy, because I'm not there as an emissary, I'm not a diplomat. And they're like, we have a feeling that the United States government was responsible for this. And I sat there, I looked, and I took my glasses off because I was crying a little bit. My wife would say I don't cry, but that's not true. And I was like, bro, here's what I'll tell you. I said, I'm not government and I'm not military. He said, but I will tell you 100%, the United States military is 100% responsible for that. And I said, and it took us 50 years to say that we were responsible for what we did to our own guys with Agent Orange and dioxin in Vietnam. I said, you're never going to hear it, because we tried to commit genocide in this entire region. And this is how we have to do it. And we were in Davos at the beginning, this time last year, and people were like, oh my God, you were at the World Economic Forum. I'm like, we were, because you got to bring light to the darkness. And we weren't in the Congress area where all the idiots are and talking about how they want to kill off everybody and do all their stupid shit. We were in the cool part, which there is actually a cool part, which they ended this year. They said, well, we're not going to do that part anymore. They want to eliminate the cool stuff. But I was on a panel speaking for the Africa House, and the moderator asked me a really unique question. She's like, how are governments going to solve hunger in Africa? And I paused. I'm like, shit, they're going to kill me. And the moderator looked at me. She's like, do you want me to rephrase the question for you? I'm like, no, I'm just trying to figure out how to word this so I don't get arrested right now. And I'm like, look, government's never going to solve world hunger. Government's never going to solve these problems, because governments are based on 3 things: money, power, and control. That's all they care about. They don't give a shit about anything else. Entrepreneurs are going to come together to solve these things. If we want to solve these things, we'll do it from a humanity standpoint. It will not be done by government. And this whole Make America Healthy Again movement, and people are like, oh, Trump's going to do it with Robert F. Kennedy and the government. No, they're not. They don't have a freaking chance. We're going to talk. They're going to talk. And what has pissed me off before is for 4 years, they're like, we're going to drain the swamp. Bitch, didn't even pull the plug.
Okay.
Right? So what we have to understand as far as society is, it's us. It's the 300 million of us as community here that have to come together and take responsibility for the environment not that we created, that we allowed to be created, that we chose. And this is the part of this satanic influence that's going on in this country. We have free will. Sometimes we choose poorly, and sometimes it's our lack of choice or allowance.
Sure.
And that's where we sit, is we can't sit back and allow people to say, don't worry, we're going to take care of this for you. It's going to be great. We're going to make America healthy again. Really? Because if this was that important, wouldn't we have already done this shit? Yeah. Because we're $37 trillion in debt, and we have a corpse right now that allegedly is in office that's continuing to just throw money at stuff. $87 million a week is going to the Taliban, which is killing our people.
Yeah.
And you go, well, if we were going to make America healthy again, could we just cut off fentanyl?
Mm-hmm.
No, because there's too much money going to the wrong people, so we can't do that either. But we're gonna talk about it.
Mm-hmm.
This is the problem. I've got friends that are highly politically influential in different aspects, that head states and are influential in different areas. And it's like, look, if you're gonna wait for other people to come save you, you ain't gonna make it.
I agree with that 100%. I agree with that 100%.
Now we got banned.
That's all right.
we have to wait for the end. If we cut this and play it first, we're like, oh, got you, bitch.
It was a good run.
Yeah.
We had a good
It's like
run.
You tried hard and you screwed up at the end.
Well, dude, seriously, I'm so grateful for the relationships with both you and Dr. Christina. Man, you guys are just awesome people. It's rare to see two people that are so comfortable in their own skin with when they're both so. I mean, both of you guys are rock stars, man, and it's you got to be very secure to be able to be comfortable in the life and the world that you guys are living in, and when it's your turn and when it's her turn and so on and so forth. You guys are just really cool.
We're stubborn.
Well, I just love you guys, man. Seriously, my wife and I are just we're big fans, man. We truly are.
Well, see, now we're family.
That's right. That's right.
Now we get to hang out. We have to do some black and white photos together, like fight photos, so it looks cool. Like,
absolutely.
Is that the same person, just side by side?
Absolutely. Well, Clayton, like again, I can't thank you enough for the time. Like I'm already looking forward to the next one. Thank you guys for introducing us to the Root brands, man. It's just my wife is extremely picky when it comes to this stuff. She's the real genius in the house when it comes to this stuff. And when I brought it home, usually, people bring us gifts a lot, and I'll set them on the counter, see if anybody wants any. She's usually like, "Oh, okay, cool. We appreciate them all." This was the bag where she goes, "Oh wow." She read it a little bit. She goes, "Oh wow."
It's funny because what we've seen with our friends is 0N is not something that's allowed to be put on the counter because kids and friends of kids jack that stuff constantly. You're like, wait a minute, this gets expensive because each pill not expensive. It's like $1.50, $1.60 a pill.
Yeah.
But when they start taking boxes, you're like, wait a minute, this is not fair. This is my stash. And we've got parents fighting with kids and going, no, this one's mine. You got to get your own.
That's right.
It's like, okay, I think this is a problem that we can live with. And it's really the fun part of seeing in kids when it's a lot like having animals, because of growing up in a veterinary practice, animals innately know what's good because energetically they feel it. Because there's an old adage that you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make him drink.
Mm-hmm.
You know why that is?
Why is that?
Because a horse can sense toxic water. So if you lead a horse to a water supply, like you're out and you're like, oh man, I'm thirsty, I gotta give my horse a break. If they go to a pond or a stream or a lake or something and the horse won't drink, the cowboy won't drink.
That's right.
Because the horse knows. They're
That's
like,
right.
No.
That's right.
This ain't good.
That's right.
But if you're not listening, if you're not resonant with your environment, you're gonna miss it. And that's our job, is to learn to get back to our foundation, our animal instincts.
Walk,
it's all in us.
Teach, heal. I love it.
Amen, brother.
The Hitstreak is powered by Rack Financial. When it comes to your credit card merchant processing, Rack Financial is efficient, reliable, and trusted. At the end of the day, when it comes to processing your credit card payments, they make it simple, the way it's supposed to be. Check out Rack Financial. Well, Clayton Thomas, the founder, CEO, and architect of the Root Brands, the husband and self-proclaimed executive assistant to Dr. Christina Rahm, who we love, previous guest. Clayton, dude, I can't thank you enough for the time. Folks, check him out, theclaytonthomas.com, therootbrands.com, on Instagram at theclaythomas and at therootbrands_. Right? So, Clayton, dude, there it is. Thank you for the time today, brother.
Thanks for letting me hang out. We hit a single or a double. A couple more, we'll score some runs.
Dude,
let's go.
They hadn't got us out yet. 96 minutes in, and they haven't gotten us out yet.
Let's go.
Baby. We're crushing it. So, all right, man. Folks, thanks so much for tuning in to another episode of The Hit Streak. I'm your man, Nick Hyder. God bless.